we have about 200 people registered, and I can see a lot more people are coming in. So let us give them some 3 minutes, and then we'll formally start our webinar. Thank you very much for coming on board. We'll start in the coming 3 minutes. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 11th F-Summer Africa Mechanized webinar, focusing on smallholder land management practices in Zimbabwe and Malawi. To enable you to identify you correctly, kindly indicate your name and affiliated institution. Also, share any questions or comments you might have in the chat or in the question and answer. This webinar has instantaneous translation from English to French and vice versa. To be able to access those services, you'll see at your bottom row, there is the interpretation globe symbol. So click that one and choose the language of your choice, whether you want to listen in French or to listen in English. In terms of process, we will have the official opening of the webinar by our chief guest, the African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment. After that, we'll share the objectives of the webinar series and webinar 11 in particular. We'll then proceed to get presentations from our 4 panelists. And this will be followed by a question and answer session. And finally, we'll have the so what next session, basically to look at what should come out of this webinar, what are the critical messages, and what are the critical actions that need to be carried over from this webinar. My name is Saidi Mkomwa. I lead the Africa Mechanized Secretariat, and I'm also the Executive Director of the African Conservation Tillage Network. I'll be your moderator, working hand in hand with my colleague, Professor Mloza Banda, who is the ACT Pillar Leader, ICAP Africa panelist, and also a professor at the University of Swaziland. So without further ado, I would now wish to welcome our chief guest. The webinar is being opened formally by the commissioner, as I said, but I will have Professor Jerome Afwekena presenting the opening remarks on behalf of the commissioner. Prof. Afwekena, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, moderator. First of all, felicitation from my boss, Ambassador Joseph Asako, the AU Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment, who very much want to be part of today's event. She's unfortunately very busy in Europe right now. That was why she instructed me to read her speech. Luckily, it's already prepared. My task is just to read what you would have said. So with the permission of the moderator, let me proceed to read her speech. I would like to recognize first and foremost the representative of the FAO Regional Office for Africa, the FAO RAF, Accra, Ghana, Joseph Keze, agricultural engineer and leader of the mechanization group in the Plant Production and Protection Division of FAO headquarters in Rome, Italy. Professor Uloza Banda from the University of Swaziland and our webinar 11 coordinator. The four esteemed panelists who Said earlier referred to, specifically Edwin Zumunga, who is the Chief Director, Agricultural Engineering, Mechanization and Soil Conservation, Ministry of Land, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water and Rural Development of Zimbabwe. Matthew Banga, ex-CEO, Foundation for Farming Zimbabwe. Luckily, there's gender balance because I would have accused the coordinator as usual. Gertrude Kambawa, Director, Department of Land Resources Conservation, Ministry of Agriculture, Malawi. Zwide Jerry, Director, Total Land Care, Malawi. Other esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen, and as my boss will always say, all protocols duly observed. Let me begin by thanking the organizing committee for inviting the African Union Commission to give the opening remarks for this important webinar, which is jointly organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the African Union Commission, and the African Conservation Tillage Network. It's also opportune to wish our Muslim faithfuls Eid Mubarak. May your life be filled with countless blessings and happiness, just like the shining crescent moon that marked the end of Ramadan. Specifically to the topic for today, Webinar 11, which addresses the mechanization of smallholder land management practices in Malawi and Zimbabwe, is no doubt an important bridge as we restart the series in 2024 on the joint action on the operationalization of the framework for sustainable agricultural mechanization in Africa, the one which we normally call for short FSAMA. So we'll be hearing a lot of FSAMA. It is an opportunity to showcase innovations and opportunities in realization of element Cs of the FSAMA framework, especially with the strategic involvement of the directors of agric mechanization of the governments of Malawi and Zimbabwe. These are obviously two countries that are doing several things right. So there's a lot which I think we can learn from them. Ladies and gentlemen, I am highly encouraged to see many sector stakeholders, including directors of agric mechanization, other mechanization experts, women and youths, and a broad spectrum of other stakeholders. Indeed, the wide array of stakeholders is fundamentally important as it helps create a participatory environment for the development and promotion of mechanization in Africa. African agriculture presents several paradoxes. I will just go ahead to list some of them. First of all, the average age of a farmer in the youngest continent is 60 years. That sounds like an aberration. The youth hate the drudgery and poverty associated with farming. It is not as if they hate farming. It sounds awkward that 80% of the food is produced by smallholders, yet the poorest are from very smallholder producers. These hardworking and resource-rich smallholders give away their sweat to middlemen traders in inequitable trading system and bypass the value addition benefits to middlemen for lack of mechanization along the value chain. In-depth strategic analysis, conversations, knowledge and information sharing needs to be undertaken to mystify the presumed paradoxes unique to this continent so also to remove the risk and exploit the opportunities. And the African Mechanized Platform provides us with this forum where we can start tackling headlong these paradoxes. Under the African Union Cadep Romadabo Declaration, which will be coming to an end by 2025, as many of you are aware, we're already working on the successor program, which will lead to a 10-year action plan for African agriculture. The aspiration to retire the whole to the museum and the FSAMA sets the necessary and robust framework to harness the power of mechanization for sustainable development of smallholders in Africa. Notably, the missing last mile to enable its realization is putting in place long-term operationalization programs at the private sector, country, regional economic communities, and continental levels. This incidentally is what the FSAMA framework has been striving to achieve. Ladies and gentlemen, AU member states explicitly committed themselves to making investments in suitable, reliable, and affordable mechanization and energy supplies in order to double productivity by 2025 with a view to ending poverty. In spite of this commitment, however, only a few countries have actually included mechanization in their national agricultural investment plans, which in the AU cycle we call the naives. This for sure is a worrisome trend, and we must now get to our feet and collectively activate this commitment in operationalizing the FSAMA. What we know is that currently, Africa is the continent with the least mechanized agricultural systems in the world. I mean, all these are very clear in the FSAMA framework. 50 to 85% of farm work continues to be done manually, depending on the country you are referring to, without the support of animals or machinery. I'm glad that Professor Murema is with us. Only 10% of total power for land preparation in sub-Saharan Africa comes from engine-powered machines, usually using fossil fuels. So there's a lot we need to do, especially if we need to tackle climate change. In order for Africa to raise agricultural land and labor productivity, to generate rural employment, and make it more attractive, and to achieve future growth and poverty reduction agendas, governments must embrace the technological policy and institutional innovations afforded by mechanization. Successful mechanization along the value chain will have to be a priority in any future development strategy for the continent, as well as growth agendas for African agricultural smallholder. Long-term country strategies and investment programs are needed to develop the infrastructure backbone. The springboard for leveraging private sector investments, inter alia, farmers and financial institutions along the entire value chain to provide demanded sustainable agri-mechanization support services. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that today's webinar will enhance the sharing of experiences and networking and will awaken the realization on the need to address challenges and opportunities related to the promotion and the development of sustainable agri-mechanization along the food value chain. I call on all of you to actively participate in the discussions and let us all commit to playing our part in ensuring coordinated and sustainable mechanization in our spheres of influence. I'm gradually bringing this opening remarks to an end, but permit me to make a very important announcement. The African Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit is scheduled to take place from 7th to 9th of May 2024 in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm humbly inviting all of you on this platform to try and attend, because there we want to tackle some of these paradoxes that are alluded to during my presentation. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank FAO, the African Union Commission, and the African Conservation Tillage Network for their invaluable support and cooperation, not just to this seminar, but the overall 2024 webinar series, which will soon be unveiling. I would also like to reiterate the commitments of the African Union Commission to support these interactions as well as under engagements on operationalization of the FSAMA framework through the Committee of the Directors of Agricultural Mechanization, DAMES, and the African Mechanized Platform. We all have an opportunity to make a difference. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to once again thank all of you for participating, and I look forward to the fruitful deliberations and recommendations. With these few remarks, it is now my pleasure to formally declare this webinar officially open. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Prof. Jerome Africana, on behalf of the Her Excellency Ambassador Madam Sako, Josepha Sako, the Commissioner for the African Union Commission on the Agriculture, Rural Economy, and Sustainable Development. We truly appreciate those remarks. We have taken keynote of the paradoxes that Africa needs to address, having the youngest continent, yet the oldest farmers. We have taken note of the need to include some sustainable agricultural mechanization in the NIPes. We have also taken note of your emphasis message on the need to develop long-term country strategies and programs. The announcement on the upcoming African Soil Health and Fertilizer Summit in Nairobi, 7th to 9th May, is also clearly noted. And finally, we thank you greatly and the African Union Commission for the continued commitment to support the operationalization of the FSAMA. This is truly appreciated. We thank you very much, and we look forward to sharing with you the outcomes of this webinar. It's our pleasure. Thank you so much, Prof.
Pleasure, yeah.
Thank you. I would now like to first introduce my co-moderator, Prof. Mloza Banda. Can you show up yourself, please?
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is Henry Mozabanda. Are you able to get me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join the webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. So I'll quickly go through the introduction about this webinar 11, and let me see how I can share my screen. Okay, so I hope the screen is visible, and basically this is the introduction to the FSAMA webinar series and webinar 11. Just to say, FSAMA was endorsed by the Specialized Technical Committee of the African Union and launched in Rome in October 2018. It informs the significance of mainstreaming mechanization and the response to the to both the Malabo Declaration and the African Union Agenda 2063. It has 10 priority elements for developing national strategies that could be used to transform agriculture in Africa. And AUC, with the technical support of FAO, in collaboration with the SCD network, is working with stakeholders to operationalize this FSAMA. So for the webinar series of in 2014, I will just be quick. So we have this webinar, which is focusing on smallholder land management practices in Zambia, in Zimbabwe and Malawi. And that is focused on element 6. Our next webinar, which is on 30th of May, will be on revamping manufacturing of agricultural machinery and implements in sub-Saharan Africa along the lines of the Sustainable Agricultural Mechanization framework. We hope to have presentations from agricultural machinery manufacturer associations of Brazil, from China, India, and Europe. Some have already confirmed, and work is in progress to get that underway. Webinar 13 will be on human resource development and capacity building. You will all agree with me, that's a very important element. Sometimes human resources is more important even than the financing itself. And this will be addressing element 8. It will be co-led or co-organized with the forum. Webinar 9 is a panel discussion at the 9th World Congress, joint actions in operationalization of the FSAMA. And we will have so many of those partners in that discussion. Webinar 15 is also during the 9th World Congress. It will be led by CIMIT, Scaling Conservation Agriculture with Sustainable Agricultural Mechanization in the context of gender equality and social inclusion. Webinar 16 will be co-organized and led by FARA. It's on innovative systems for sustainable technology development, uptake, or adoption. Webinar 17 is again coming to the role of smallholder farmers in agricultural development and food security in Africa, to be co-organized with the Pan-African Farmers Organization, the University of Nairobi, the CRI Ghana, the Director of Mechanization in Ghana. And our last webinar for the year will be webinar 18, annual summary paper to be prepared by the Africa Mechanized Secretariat, basically to consolidate all the lessons within the year and share those with the participants to tease out the way forward, what should be the priority discussions in 2025. Webinar 11 aims at understanding the predominant land preparation techniques in Malawi and Zimbabwe and how they could benefit from or impede or be transformed using the FSAMA element 6, sustainable transformation of land preparation and crop animal husbandry practices. We are expecting that from the knowledge and sharing that will be done, we can have information sheets on smallholder seeding systems developed or updated. We're expecting that from the conversations, we can have an action plan for realization of the identified priority interventions. And also, we are expecting to have from this summary paper of the proceedings, which will be shared with all of you and also in the Africa Mechanized platform. Again, to remind you, the webinar series are jointly organized by the African Union, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the African Conservation Tillage Network, in partnership with the majority of you stakeholders who are here. So with those introductory remarks, let me now proceed to introduce our first speaker. And this is no other than the Chief Director, Engineer Edwin Zimunga, from the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water, and Rural Development in Zimbabwe. He will be presenting on the experiences of Zimbabwe in the mechanization aspect, and of course mentioning on how this is related to the practices that are being implemented in Malawi. Engineer Zimunga, Chief Director Zimunga, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair Saidi, and good morning, everyone. Please allow me to share my screen.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'll put this on.
Yes, the screen is clearly visible. Just put it in presentation mode and you are ready to go. The floor is yours.
So thank you very much for this particular opportunity to share Zimbabwe's experiences in terms of the mechanization landscape when we are looking at conservation agriculture and how we have done it at nationwide scale. So the outline of the presentation is going to touch on these 5 main items. And I think without laboring much on how this is distributed, let me go straight into the presentation. When you look at the land tenure within Zimbabwe and the organization of farmers, you realize that we had a land reform exercise in the year 2000, 1998 to 2000, where we had to redistribute land. And pretty much out of that exercise, you realize that most of the smallholder farmers, which number 3 million plus, lie within the communal areas or within the A1 scheme management areas. And these numbers now actually tell you that the bulk of Zimbabwe's population, which numbers 15 million, is actually 67% supported by these farming communities as well as farmers within the rural establishment and setup. But because that's the nature of the land tenure, you still want to understand, the dynamics in terms of the agroecological regional tailoring to say there are 5 farming regions within Zimbabwe, which are described based on their annual rainfall patterns, the best being region 1 and the west, which is more or less of arid to semi-arid regions, being region 4 and 5. And as a country, we adopted what we call the agroecological regional tailoring, where for the arid regions, basically the crops that are grown there ought to be drought tolerant and drought resistant, like your millets. And for agroecological region 1 and 2, that's where you do crops like maize and other cash crops like tobacco and the likes. Now, given that background, you realize that the bulk of our farming population still being distributed according to those patterns lie within region number 2 up to region number 4. So at a government level, we then had to take deliberate measures out of that, the role that government plays, to make sure that the strategic investments that go into agriculture speak to the requirements and the needs of the smallholder farmer. And because of climate change, we adopted the conservation agriculture concept called Umbudza or Intwasa in local languages. And based on our agricultural policy, which is running from 2020 to 2025, the major issue there is to move most of the farmers from poverty into an upper middle income society as we journey towards the Vision 2030 at international global perspectives. So the strategic investment that our government made to look at infrastructure, machinery, equipment, and technologies for the same smallholder farmer. And pretty much most of the facilities that we rolled out originally, despite having started by private sector, we also made sure that as government, we took those on board and exploded them to national level to be government-led initiatives and facilities. So the conservation agriculture component for Zimbabwe is a component which we adopted from Foundations for Farming, where the household food requirements are done in a plot which measures 38 by 16 meters. In this plot, the whole thinking is to say, out of this plot, when you do conservation agriculture by potholing and covering in mulch, you see in this to the bottom left of the picture that you see there, this is meant, and this was designed, meant to meet food household security. However, the drudgery now, because these are manually done using the handheld hoe, became a very big issue. So you realize that as part of the critical need, the issue to do with the handheld hoe brought the challenges around labor. Why? Because it's labor. It's very labor intensive to do those plots using the handheld hoe. And the other critical need, because we had exploded this to national level, had to do with financing. However, also going forward, for its sustainability, production and productivity, when you look at, manually done plots and manually done fields, the productivity levels are very, very low. So we had to come up with a support infrastructure at facility level as a strategic investment as government to say, how do we, bring this tenet to the next level in terms of its mechanization. And pretty much what we then did as a country was to split down the farming activities, according to unit operations. And when you do Pfumvudza or conservation agriculture, the biggest constraint there lies with land preparation and tillage equipment. Because it was using the handheld hoe, it became a very, very laborsome, activity to do. So what we then did from a financing perspective, when you look to the extreme bottom right, you see there are a lot of input packages there. Government deliberately started funding all the inputs that go onto a Pfumvudza plot, simply because we wanted to make sure that there is food security at household level. But it had to be climate proofed, and all the tenets of conservation agriculture had to be done before a farmer could benefit from the inputs. Then the second item had to do with labor. And we then had to play around to say, okay, do we need to continue going on potholing? Or pretty much, if the tenet of conservation agriculture simply speaks to minimum disturbance of the soil, then surely it means we can also go zero tillage, or we can do REAP technology, which is where we then came up with a facility which had to do with powered equipment. Deliberately, we have been trying to run away from animal draft power, because the thrust within the Zimbabwean government plans is that the handheld hoe and the animal drone implement are now ripe and ready for the museum. And if you are going to sustainably manage agriculture, even at that small order level, it has to be motorized and modern. So we then came up with a facility, which we call the smallholder or Pfumvudza mechanization facility. Now, this facility started to look at all the unit operations across the value chain of a particular farm, right from tillage up until you get to the transport and storage component. So pretty much the design was actually informed by a lot of research which had been done collaboratively. And we had to come up with a starter pack and a facility worth $6 million for the Fumvudza scheme. This one was being offered now on a service provider model, where the service provider would do these plots maybe for a minimum number of 20 to 30 families within the same vicinity. And the package consisting of a two-wheel tractor, a toolbar, a direct seeder, a trailer, a thresher, and the two-wheel tractor cost only about $4,970. And because of the existing programming within government, where we had the crowding in of private sector participating, we then brought all those partners, the banks, to distribute the equipment on loan basis so that they could be recovered. So we have pretty much really tried to run away from the manual way of doing things within the smallholder sector or under the Fumvudza concept. And this framework that we adopted is a framework where the government of Zimbabwe, as well as equipment suppliers, outlay capital, but equipment is loaned to farmers on a recovery basis through participating banks. And then we do a stop order facility with product off-takers. Now, from a mechanization standpoint, that has really worked. And we then realized that to build on top of this, we then had to continue, to move to the next level, where ultimately we then now are in the process of developing and revising our mechanization policy and strategy as a country. This is work that has already started, and I'm glad also to say we are getting support from multiple stakeholders like FAO and the Conservation Tillage Network. We have also made sure that we craft and develop national standards to the same, while we also adopt robotics and within our mechanization, and ultimately to also cascade the results back to a supporting backbone industry. The country has then started doing, second generation engineering. In other circles, they call it reverse engineering, to make sure that all the value chain of mechanization is catered for pretty much well. And I think the statistics pretty much speak the result. As of last year, when we look at the tractor sales statistics from private sector, the bulk of tractors which you see within the 0 to 60 horsepower range are all but going towards the smallholder farmer. And instead of the two-wheel tractor now, Zimbabwe is now transitioned from two-wheel to a four-wheel tractor, which still does the same as what was being done with the two-wheel. Because I think in terms of economics as well, in terms of efficiency, the four-wheel tractor at those small ranges, outperforms the two-wheel tractor. And pretty much 25% of the smallholder range of the equipment sold up to 60 horsepower, statistics show that particular trend. Now, we cannot really, speak mechanization in Zimbabwe if we then don't explode and show the full picture. Yes, at Fumvudza or conservation agriculture level, this is what we have done for the smallholder. But we have now also gotten to a point where we are now commercializing conservation agriculture as a country. And we are saying that for us to go through that, government-led initiatives have spent in excess of $400 million from the year 2022 to date. This is what we are currently doing in terms of the full spectrum of mechanization for field operations, right from land preparation up until storage. And we have got private sector now coming in to propose facilities that are running under the AMDA framework that I spoke about. And pretty much we have seen traction because most of our farmers also that are in dryland agriculture, they are now also practicing conservation tillage on their farms rather than the traditional, plow and disc harrow type of land preparation. And pretty much when you then look at it from a holistic picture, we have had this particular facility called the Ben New Holland facility. All the attachments and implements on it at that bigger level are coming in with conservation tillage implements. And last but not least, there are of course challenges despite the good successes. And we are saying that in terms of the farmer profiling, despite all these good facilities, capital intensive nature of mechanization also makes it difficult, for some farmers within the profiles to access the equipment, because some of them really cannot get to that point where we would want to mechanize them. But of course, the service provider model is covering that gap. And pretty much going forward, we are saying that the high cost of maintenance and equipment hire the service providers is not really spared the service providers from challenges. But look, we don't want to dwell on challenges. We always look for further opportunities. And there's a lot going on in terms of those opportunities. And we are saying that for us now to continue on the trajectory of mechanization, it has to be at all levels. Yes, at smallholder level, middle, as well as large-scale farming levels. We are, as a country, going conservation agriculture and conservation tillage. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I would like to conclude this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chief Director Zimunga, for that very impressive presentation. Rich with facts that Formosa is highly productive, but also labor intensive, that you are running away from animal traction, that I really impressed with the smallholder Formosa starter package, looking at mechanization along the entire value chain, a package of $4,970. The Agricultural Mechanization Development Alliance, that's another very impressive intervention. And the $400 million investments over the past few years, but also that your four-wheel tractors are now coming with conservation tillage, with conservation agriculture attachments. That is very holistic. So thank you so much again for that impressive presentation. For dear participants, if you have questions, if you have comments, we will not take them now, we'll take them later. So put them on the chat and we'll be listening to them soon. So now is my pleasure to welcome our next presenter. He was having challenges on the internet, but I can see he's back. Matthew Mbanga is, he used to be the CEO of Foundations for Farming in Zimbabwe, but now he's a freelance consultant, and also he teaches MBA university courses in universities in the US. Matthew, I hope you are able to connect, share
Yes,
your
sir.
screen and make your presentation.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Good morning, colleagues. Wonderful to be able to connect with you. I hope you can all see my screen now. Sorry, I'm having some challenges. I'm actually rural at the moment and found a spot of good signal, so just bear with me. Hopefully we can make it last for the length of this presentation. Okay, so this is obviously my name, Matthew Mbanga. Small field, more yield is the title of my discussion this morning, because I believe that everything that we're discussing, everything that we're trying to achieve has been achieved. I think we've seen the results, and I'll share a little bit of the success of that as we go through this. But regenerative agriculture, I like the term regenerative because it speaks to restoration, it speaks to renewal, it speaks to redemption. and our soils are devastated. Our soils have been pulverized and destroyed by poor and unsustainable technologies and ways of farming. So I believe that what we're all about is trying to protect and restore and regenerate and renew the soil. We do this by 5 M's. So this is minimal soil disturbance. That the first three will be familiar to you. Minimal soil disturbance, obviously no plowing, minimal pulverization or inversion of the soil. This is important to maintain the microbial life of the soil, important to maintain the structure of the soil. We don't want to lose truckloads of soil down the streams into stream banks and clogging up dams and waterways through unsustainable plowing and soil disturbance. So the first one, M, minimal soil disturbance. Second one, maximum soil cover or mulch. In order to achieve this, we must ban burning. We must have no free-range livestock. Where you see free-range livestock, you see poverty. That's my experience traveling throughout Africa. I've driven up and down through several parts of Southern Africa, spent a lot of time in rural areas, and it's actually possible to see from the side of the road where there's free-ranging livestock, you see that there's no grass, you see that there's poverty. And where you see fencing, where you see control, where you see order, where you see structure, you see tall grass and you see productivity and success. That's just my observation. The third M is just for the sake of trying to have 5 M's, I used multiple species, but this is of course crop rotations, which we're all familiar with, breaking the cycle of diseases, being able to rotate the crops, what the maize takes out, the soybeans restore or replenish as a legume. We all understand that the success and the importance of crop rotations is well documented. So the next two are actually come from innovations by Zimbabwean farmers. So the first one, management. This is really the key innovation that Brian Oldreive was able to bring through Foundations for Farming and the history there that I have. Again, I'm no longer part of Foundations for Farming. I'm operating as an independent consultant and trying to close some of the gaps that I see in our current unsustainable land management practices. But I've just spent 3 days with Brian up in Zambia, and again was just blown away, and so appreciated the power of his concept of management and high management. So he introduced 4 principles of profit making, which is on time, at a high standard, without wastage, and with joy. And this brings a sense of productivity, a sense of purpose, a sense of dignity. And that was the key innovation. That was the real success of Fumfudza and the success that we saw in Zimbabwe was this management. It was high management. And Brian Oldreive found a correlation between, certainly in maize production and in farming in general, this direct correlation between high standards of farming, straight lines, professionalism, precision application of fertilizers, compost, whatever it is, seed, spacing, rows, and seed placement, all these sorts of things. Where there are high standards, there are high yields, a direct correlation. So management is a key principle of the success of any operation on the farm. The final one is movement of livestock, which is, as I said, another Zimbabwean. So who actually pioneered this as far back as the 70s and still kind of doing that. So Alan Savory, you might be familiar with his planned grazing or his holistic management. And this is really a livestock management innovation, which speaks about using animals, large volumes of animals being carefully managed and utilized and returned to the land in large volumes to aid in the preparation and the preservation of our cropping areas. So those are the 5 M's that I
Hello, Matthew. We are losing you. Hello, Matthew. We cannot hear you.
Now, say?
Now we can. Yes.
Can you hear me
now
now?
we can. Proceed.
Are we still there?
Yes. No, you have been disconnected. Okay. So we have lost Matthew, as he had just been explaining. He's facing challenges with poor internet connectivity. So I think you'll give him the chance to speak.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
Can you hear me? I'm back.
Yes.
Wonderful. Sorry about that. It's just started raining, so signal is a real challenge. I'll try to be as brief as possible. So this is the Pfumvudza concept. You see the 1 hectare plot, and the Pfumvudza plot is actually 1/16th of a hectare. So this is simple, manageable, needed. And I think people misinterpreted some of the sort of innovation there, that simply the different ways of doing things, the minimal soil disturbance, maximum soil cover, and all of these things. The innovation, because we've known that for a long time. It was therefore manageable. It was therefore possible to do things at a high standard. So we raised the standard.
So sorry, Matthew. You are not audible. Sorry, you are not audible. So I suggest that our next presenter, who is presenting on behalf of Director Gertrude Kambaua, should prepare this presentation, and then we'll give Matthew the space when his internet is back to hear his very interesting story. So Kefas Kamoyo is the Principal Land Resources Conservation, Ministry of Agriculture, Department of Land Resources Conservation in Lilongwe, Malawi. Kefas, are you able to share your screen and proceed with your presentation?
Is he around Kefas? He was trying to call me. I think he had challenges.
He had challenges also.
Yeah. He didn't contact, did he contact you, Said? No?
No, not yet. But so we give the floor to you, Zwide Jerry, in case Kefas is having challenges. We'll give the floor to you. And that is the person speaking, who will give the floor to now is Zwide Jerry, who is the co-founder and director of Total Land Care in Malawi. But Total Land Care also operates in Zambia and Tanzania. And he has vast experience with the Total Land Care as per the attached bio that you have seen, and as he will be sharing with us shortly. So just make your presentation in presentation mode and you are ready to go. Over to you, Jerry. Zwide Jerry.
Thank you. I don't know where I cannot get where I can do my mod here. I can't see the icon.
Just go to the lower right. You'll see the screen.
Lower right.
Lower
Yes,
right.
Yes, thanks. Is
Yes.
that okay?
Yes. Now, perfect. Proceed.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Said. Sorry, we are having all these challenges with connectivity, but I'll try to be fast. I think mine is much simpler. I even feel draft. by, Edwin's presentation, looking at all that level of mechanization. But all the same, we deal with smallholder farmers, and we are also trying to move in that direction. Just a quick mention of Total Land Care, which you have already mentioned. We are a local non-governmental organization, which we founded, myself and Trent, in 1999. We are also registered in Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zambia. And our mission is to transform the livelihoods of rural households from subsistence to prosperity and self-reliance. Our motto is a hand up, and rather than a handout. So we have those interlinked objectives to achieve our mission, where we work with the farmer groups, community groups, try to strengthen their governance structures. We integrate climate smart and natural resource management practices with farm diversification, irrigation, and also we've done a bit of small scale mechanization. But we also did a lot in terms of the conventional CA, which is using a small hoe and a dibble stick. But we also support the production of some of the key market-driven value chains tailored to different farming systems. Of course, trying to help farmers, to link them to input suppliers, to finance, agriculture financing, as well as markets. I would just like to go straight to some of the challenges that we have been facing to promote CA with respect to the projects which we have been implementing as Total Land Care as a local NGO. One of them, of course, is this issue of conflicting policies. As you know, in Malawi, we have to deal with this mindset of region. And we see that still, I think the minister still retains their policy with regard to region on contour, which to us seems to be still in direct opposition to promoting CA. So this is the thing we need to discuss further with the ministry, how best we can address this. Of course, some people believe that we can do in some situations CA is not appropriate, but maybe it's the other way around, that maybe farming is done in the wrong areas. Of course, this issue of resistance to change is also another issue of a challenge we have to deal with. Delivery of inconsistent and conflicting technical messages on CA by different organizations. We see an emergence of organizations that would also like to take part in promoting CA, but maybe they don't have a track record, and they bring all this confusion to farmers, bringing correct messages, which in the end compromises the merits and benefits of CA. Quality training. Generally, there's limited practical knowledge on CA, which now requires that we should be delivering quality training to extension staff from all the players, government and other private sector NGOs, so we can implement CA correctly. One of the other challenges is focus on inputs. So most farmers or some of the extension staff believe that you can only do CA if you have specific inputs or tools. And I think this has really made a big impact in terms of uptake of the practice. Or if you have done CA under a project which supplies input and is phased out, then you see quite some high level of adoption by some of the farmers because of that linkage. For Malawi, maybe Cephas, I don't know how he structured his presentation, but we still have limited access to appropriate mechanization. As a project, as an organization, we have tried to test some of the simple, CA tools, such as the two-wheel tractor. We've done also a bit of hiring. We worked with the Ministry of Agriculture. As you know, in the past, they had imported a number of tractors which were placed in the districts. So we tried to work to provide some reapers and then do a bit of a hiring scheme. But we have also done this Magoi reaper, ADP, animal drone reaper, which we have also tried to test with some of the farmers and some of the projects. So these are some of the key challenges that I wanted to highlight. You can see some of the problems there because of the problem of, because of the impact of ridging, a lot of soil runoff, a lot of mineralization. Just to emphasize the point, this ridging business, I think also Edwin alluded to this problem of ridging, which is a big problem still in Malawi, which we have to deal with. There we try to demonstrate that just from 1 meter of a ridge, the amount of soil that you are moving is about 54 kgs. And you can look there on the right, across the country, this equates to about 22 million kilograms of ridges, kilometers of ridges every year, which entails moving almost 1,200 million tons of soil, which is a big problem. And we all know the impact of that. Some of the practices which we have been doing at CA, and I think you also, Matthew, mentioned some of these, so I don't have to spend much time on this. Minimum soil disturbance, no ridging or tillage by manual or mechanical means. Direct seed into small planting holes on the flat or on top of old ridges with a bamboo stick. Good soil cover. Of course, we retain crop residues. I think Matthew also mentioned. On the surface with no burning. Rotation and intercrops with emphasis on legumes to improve soil health, control weeds, pests and diseases, and to improve ground cover. As I mentioned earlier on, we also tried to introduce appropriate CA mechanization on small scale. So we introduced this two-wheel tractor with the reaper and the planter. Then we had the ADP with the Magori reaper. And also we've done the hiring. Okay, we use the government system. They had these tractors, which unfortunately are not in good condition presently. The approach was well welcomed by farmers, but then we could not continue because of the issue of how these tractors have been maintained. But I think it's an area that also can work very well for our situation. I just wanted to show also some of the pictures here. On the left, you can see that this is the practice with some of the farmers. They've been doing it. This has old practice, no ridging, just planting with a hoe on the flat. And then in the later years, we also introduced the dibble stick for planting. Quite traditional, simple tool, but also I'm sure also some challenges with labor there. This is just to show you that with a simple technology, just a dibble stick, this is the kind of result that you can get. Okay, also intercropping with cowpeas, relay cropping. Beautiful results. This is what we achieved over a period from 2006 to about 2019. We reached over 50,000 households, close to about 14,000 hectares, just through the different projects we are doing as TOC. Now here, I just want to just provide our thoughts about what we feel can be done to scale up CA. We need to strengthen the knowledge base among all stakeholders. Very important is that CA should be an integral part of a broader agricultural development program. Rather than being a standalone, it doesn't work very well. So you might bring all this equipment, but if it's not linked to a commodity or you are promoting a value chain, it may not work very well. Certified training, very important. Harmonization of messages also is very critical. and also promotion of animal and mechanized reaping services. I think we try to do this with CIMIT as well as Conservation Farming Unit of Zambia. And I think it's an area that we can also explore if we have some funding from, I think we heard from AU that they are interested to finance this kind of thing. Related to the above, we should jointly seek long-term investment at regional or sub-regional or multi-country level in appropriate and affordable mechanization, targeting groups of farmers, but also prioritizing medium-scale farmers. Because I think for us, most of the times we have done small-scale farmers, but I think we need also to look at supporting medium-scale farmers. So that's the end of my presentation, very brief. Here we try to do a training on ADP using a Reaper, Magoy, and on the right, farmers appreciating the high, germination rate as a result of improving the planting conditions. So this is my short presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Director Zwide Jerry, for those sharing those amazing work. There is indeed a huge opportunity to get mechanization contribute to the smallholder farmer work that is happening in Malawi. I will not try to summarize the many very important aspects you mentioned. I wished we had Director get through this presentation completed by Kefas, but I know Kefas was having challenges to join. Kefas, have you managed to join? Kefas is not yet with us, but Matthew Mbanga is back with us, and we can give you a few minutes, Mbanga, just to highlight, to summarize your very interesting presentation. We are running short of time, but we want to hear from you what the FUMUZA has been doing.
Wonderful. Super. Thank you much. So we'll just jump straight to the point in success of the
No, it's not working.
Spoke about the land reform and how this challenge here, but you can see the next in 2021
Matthew, it's not working.
Spike, and that was the Pfumvudza years.
Matthew, it's not working. We cannot hear you. So what you'll do is we'll share the rest of your PowerPoint presentation with the people here. But let me now welcome my colleague, my co-moderator, Prof. Mloza Banda, to start moderating what we have. Unless Kefas, are you in? Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry?
Kefas says he didn't have the link.
It has been shared with him?
Yeah, it was not shared. I've just shared. I've just sent him.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
sure.
there's unfortunate. But I can imagine, Matthew, it's so frustrating. You had such a powerful message, which we cannot hear. But your summary...
If you can hear me now, I won't share screen. I think that sharing the screen is taking too much of the bandwidth.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I'll just cut straight to the point. I just, in terms of the labor intensity regarding Pfumvudza or handheld hoes and conservation agriculture, I've personally done a number of Pfumvudza fields. We've recorded it and put it on the Foundations for Farming Facebook page. Please go and look at it. It took me and one other, a female office employee, 3.5 hours to dig an entire Pfumvudza plot. 3.5 hours. I think this misconception about labor intensity with the budza, with the handheld hoe, is a complete misconception and a real hindrance to scaling this work and being able to get people to adopt, because 3.5 hours to dig 1,456 holes, which is all the holes required for Mfudze plot, which will feed a family of 6 for an entire year. I've stood next to a field of a well laid out, prepared field, Mfudze field, done by a widow. She was standing there by herself. I said, "This is beautiful. This is impressive. Was this hard?" And she said, "No, it was easy. I did it for a few hours in the morning yesterday, and then a few hours in the morning today." I said, "By yourself?" She said, "No, my 14-year-old son helped me." So two people, a woman and a 14-year-old boy, did it in 2 mornings. So me and a female colleague did it in 3.5 hours. Okay, so it's not a labor-intensive thing. By contrast, if you use a small tractor or ox-drawn plow, draft plow, the research that was done at the Henderson Research Center here in Zimbabwe, in Mazoe district, found that you would walk 136 kilometers if you were to just plow 1 hectare. So this is what this lady did the previous year. When I said to her, "What did you do last year? This is the first year you've done Mfudze, and this is great. It took you 2 days. What did you do last year?" She said, "It took me 2 weeks to walk with my neighbor's plow because she didn't own a plow or oxen. So she borrowed from her neighbor. It took her 2 weeks." And I said, and what did it cost you, to borrow the neighbor's plow?" She said, "Oh, well, I had to work in his field for 2 weeks." So that was a month of labor to do 1 hectare in conventional agriculture, even with the drought, with the handheld, with 2 days worth of labor, so much less labor, she will feed her family because she's able to mulch it. It's so small that she can keep it completely mulched. So even in a low rainfall year like we're experiencing, that mulch is able to germinate and be successful even in a very dry year, because it's so small that in the event of a mid-season drought, which has become the norm now, you can put a liter of water on every single plant simply by carrying 7 buckets of water a day for 10 days. This is why we call it fail-proof. It's an incredible thing, but the point is that it's small, and maize is a food crop. It's not a cash crop. So why would we grow any more beyond household food security? If every household just grows 1, they can spend a day of land preparation. It's not labor intensive. They don't need mechanization for this. Where the mechanization must come in is in the value add. So if we can feed ourselves on 1/16 of a hectare and unlock the other 15/16 of a hectare, average land size for a small scale farmer in Zimbabwe is 1.8 hectares. So we've got a tremendous amount of land that is now unlocked. We're now able to grow cash crops in it. We're now able to grow oil seed and so on. And that's where the mechanization.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I think you have been heard. Your mechanization,
as a continent, we're the youngest continent. Okay.
Your message has been heard. Because you are starting to break again, I will summarize your message that Fumuza is a labor-intensive exercise, is a misconception. I think you are challenging us all here. You are saying this is a misconception. You did it yourself, and within 3 hours, 3.5 hours, you are able to do the 1/16 of a hectare. And that mechanization is needed, but not necessarily for Musa per se, but for the value addition. So that is a challenge you're posing to all these people here. And I think they will react, they will engage. And we thank you so much. But as I said, we'll post your presentations in the platform so that people can read and learn on your remaining messages. So thank you very much for that. And since we are not doing well in terms of time, let me now, we missed the opportunity to hear from the director of Malawi, but the presentation again is available, perhaps already on the... Oh, Kefas, you're here. Can you just summarize quickly now that you are here? The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I didn't get the link on time. I registered, but I didn't get the link on time. But once again, Kefas Kamwe, Principal Land Resource Conservation Officer, representing the Director of Land Resources Conservation in Malawi, Mrs. Gertrude Kambawa. So basically, my presentation was on the conservation agriculture adoption status in Malawi and the role of sustainable agriculture mechanization.
Are you sharing your screen, or should we do it from our side? Are you able to share your screen, your presentation?
Summary, what I can say is that in our department of Land Resources Conservation is one of the. Oh no, I can do it. Hello? Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, we're able. Just put it in presentation mode.
Yeah, okay. So what I was saying is our department is one of the technical departments in the Ministry of Agriculture. We are there to and training in order to achieve successful land degradation, so that we can increase productivity for agricultural growth and development. So basically, as land resources, we are aiming at reducing land degradation in the country. You know, over 70% of our land is degraded. So we need to reduce land degradation. Basically, we are using what we call integrated catchment conservation and management approach. As you can see there, where we assess the current status of the land, agricultural landscapes. But our vision is to make sure that we restore soil health or land status. Basically, we look at soil erosion, formation of gullies, deforestation, what we call sustainable land management practices, but also climate smart agriculture interventions in this area. So basically, that's what we do. Currently, our flag carrier as a department is the promotion of conservation agriculture. It has been there as our flag carrier. And for implementation of conservation agriculture, whereby we, as you can see on the picture, we have the three core principles, whereby minimum soil disturbance is our core, good soil cover, crop rotations, complemented by what we call other practices, organic manure, improved seeds, agroforestry, soil and water conservation measures. These are complementary practices to our conservation agriculture. Currently, I think in Malawi we have 11 stakeholders that are promoting conservation agriculture, because we have what we call sustainable agriculture trusts, which we take stock of the stakeholders. Three are mainly promoting mechanization and CA. But in general, in Malawi, we have different land preparatory or crop husband practices. As you can see on the picture, 90% we use the hand hoe or human power. 4% is we are using drought power, like animal power. 6% we're using like tractor power. So you can see in the pictures, there are those mini tractors, but also those.
Sorry, Kefas, can you move your slide? Yes. We are still looking on slide 1. I think you're on slide 4 now.
Yes, I'm on slide 4. Are you able to see now?
But you are still your screen is still on slide 1.
Here on my screen is moving.
No, it's not moving. So move to slide 4.
Oh, I see. But I'm going to the next slide. Next slide here. So now you are able to see.
You are still on slide 1.
But maybe I can stop here. You can share from that angle if you're able, because
Okay. Okay.
on
Okay.
slide 4 here, but I wonder why I'm not. Yeah. So maybe just sorry, colleagues, just a moment. Can you share from that angle on slide 4 or
We will.
slide 2? Okay.
I think you are there now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I explained on the Malawi's the current land preparation practices, where we are looking at we are still under human power, which is 90%. 4% is drought power. 6% is tractor power. Looking at the whole country. So these are some of the equipment or that we are using. Next slide, please. Yes,
Hello, Kefas. Hello, Kefas, we cannot hear you. Kefas, we can see you have not dropped, but we cannot hear you. Sorry, we seem to have a challenge. He's still there connected, but he cannot, we cannot hear him. He has actually dropped. So it's unfortunate, the internet challenge again. So I'll stop sharing, but in his presentation, as you can see, he had the adoption trends. He also had the success story on the mega farm units.
Yeah. So maybe on the mega farm units.
Okay.
So I don't know what is happening, but I think on the mechanization, I can say that in the country we have the agriculture commercialization project. It's called a commercialization project, which has distributed 92 tractors and accessories to produce organizations to secure markets. This is another opportunity, but also we have what we call mega farm unit, which is to transform the Malawi agriculture sector. And this initiative is now when we have managed to form Mechanization Association of Malawi, but also we are revamping distribution of tractors across the country in the what we call agriculture development divisions, where there is a hiring scheme of tractors. They were there, but now we have added 8 new tractors and accessories. However, the problem is still there that some of these accessories are not still in tandem with the conservation agriculture. So I think this is an opportunity where, as a department, we are in the mega farm unit. We are trying to make sure that the track accessories that are suitable can be used for CA. We still have problems like the key barriers to CA adoption in Malawi. We are looking at some resistance to change, lack of understanding in terms of long-term benefits of CA among the farmers. We had the problems where in 2018-19 we had 4 armyworms. Farmers associated for the coming in of 4 armyworm disease pests as because of CA, which is not true. We are looking at issues of trainings. You can see we do conduct trainings with our farmers together with extension workers, and the little access to mechanization is still a problem. Many of our smallholder farmers cannot afford to pay for these services, so it's still a problem. That's why I think Total Land Care has demonstrated the use of mini tractors. Next, please. We have also, as a success story, we have policies and guidelines that are promoting conservation agriculture in Malawi. We have what we call Malawi 2063 agenda, creating inclusive, wealthy nation and self-reliant nation, where mechanization is a core, but also land resource management policy, the agriculture policy, Malawi National Climate Smart Agriculture Framework. We are talking of mechanization, but I think we are not emphasizing much on CA. We have these guidelines. You can see this is our guidelines. But so what are challenges that are there remaining? We are looking at the actual integration of some in CA, like into our policies and regulations. But also more importantly is looking at calibration and validation of mechanization tools for CA. This is very important. And the flow of funds to support some for CA is another area that we need to focus on. What are the scaling up and sustainable land use systems in Africa that we would want is we need to situation conservation agriculture based on a socio-ecological framework in order to avoid potential mismatch between the technology and the targeted biophysical and the socio-economic environment. That's very important. But also we need to expose our farmers to different practices through what we call farmer field schools, exchange visits, and all those demonstrations using tools and equipment, but also the actual training in the practical use of new technologies. That's very important. Fostering cooperation and dialogue between scientists, suppliers, and farmers, between government and education institutions. One time we tried to develop a curriculum on conservation agriculture with the Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, but it did not materialize because the project that we're implementing under midterm review, the donors say, no, that's not a priority. So we had a problem. But also integration of conservation agriculture in agricultural development frameworks, that's very important to shift from conventional farming. What are the roles of SAM in Malawi specifically to scale up adoption of CA? We are looking at promote and rectify policies that we should encourage SAM, especially under CA, but also support machinery leasing schemes. That's very important. We should encourage schemes to support smallholder farmers. As I said, most of the smallholder farmers cannot afford, cannot access the mechanizations to do like CA and other operations. But also sustainable mechanization across the value chain, that's very important. So this is what I had. Thank you for your attention, but also apologies for the internet problems. I tried to be at a place where it works, but it seems it's a problem. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kefas Kamoyo, from Principal Land Resources Conservation from the Department of Land Resources Conservation, Minister of Agriculture in Malawi. Now, let me hand over to my co-moderator, Prof. Mloza Banda, to moderate the session on the questions and answers. We have received several questions on the chat as I see them. And now is the opportunity, besides those in the chat, if you want to share your comments, you can also raise your hand and we'll accordingly, Prof. Mloza Banda will accordingly determine how he gives the floor to the people, the participants, as well as the comments in the chat for the presenter to respond. Thank you. Over to you, Prof. Mloza Banda.
Thank you very much, convener. Before giving up the floor to the participants, I have one question for Zimbabwe and one question for Total Land Care. The question to Chief Director Edwin Zimunga, Zimbabwe, is somewhere there was a slide about the attractive investment that are coming in from the private sector. I just wanted to find out whether we've had the same with respect to international financial institutions such as ADB, World Bank, IFAD, and others that might be existing in Zimbabwe, in the region, on the continent, or across. To what extent are the international financial institutions able to provide catalytic investments to leverage the private sector investment that we have seen projected from Zimbabwe? That's the question to Chief Director. Thank you.
Prof. Mloza Banda, I can see there are several hands. Maybe you are not able to see them from where you are sitting.
There's so many NGOs.
But I wonder whether you wanted the Chief Director to answer that question, or we are too late.
Yes, but he's disappeared. He was muted. Perhaps he couldn't get me.
Okay.
So in the interest of time, I moved to have Total Land Care perhaps address one question.
Yes, please. Go ahead, Prof.
Yes, there's so many NGOs in Malawi and elsewhere that in the CA sphere. So from your experience as an NGO, what are your strategies which perhaps could be used by other NGOs, of course, subject to specific, tenets in different countries? What are the strategies that you could use, or perhaps you might have used, to harness and advance mechanized farming to enhance, CA? What are the strategies that you might have attempted, or perhaps there's a potential for you to use in order to harness an advanced mechanized CA uptake, particularly for the small scale farmers?
I take that one now?
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Yes, as I did mention, we tried to do some piloting or testing some of the appropriate mechanization equipment. We did that under a project which was funded by the Norwegian government, and Conservation Farming Unit was a lead organization. We did in a few countries. And also in our own projects where we try to incorporate these elements of mechanization. I think the first thing is that it's the issue I talked about, to get rid of this mindset about rigging, which is engraved in most of the minds of the farmers and even some organizations. And I think Kefas also alluded to that challenge. I think we need to move in paces. We need to start from a simpler angle and move up to looking at this high-tech mechanization, because we we have in Malawi, and I think in the neighboring countries, the majority of farmers are smallholder farmers. And the way we did it is also to work through groups of farmers. So some of the groups are existing, maybe they are small cooperatives or associations who are focusing on a particular value chain for the market. And then we try to negotiate with them, looking at the challenges they are facing in terms of improving methods of planting, of seeding, of fertilizer application to at least to minimize labor use. So working through small groups is also another way to look at it. So they can share the equipment, and maybe it could also be affordable to them to own it as a group. But also the issue of hiring. If we can have some of the youth groups which could own some of this equipment, and then they can use it as a business to hire out these equipments, would be also something that we've been working on to look at it, how it can work. But I think the biggest thing is we should avoid, it's important to have donor funding to finance these programs. But I think it has to be done in a very smart way, that we are, in a way, trying to establish sustainability. Okay, how can we create sustainability so these items are being used and managed by the farmers? We need to look at developing a strong supply chain with locally in these countries. So I think for us, it's the financing part also which is very critical. How do we finance mechanization? Is it the banks who should be doing it? What about the interest rates? We've tried to do this with some of the equipment like solar irrigation with the NBS Bank in Malawi, but the interest rate is quite high. And also the issue of collateral. But I think, to me, perhaps that's the most sustainable way to do it. That maybe we can use donor funding to give to some of the banks. Then we can revolve those funds, and farmers can be getting loans, paying back, and then we can scale up the program. I think these are some of the ideas that we are trying to work out as an NGO.
Thank you so much, Director.
Yeah.
Is Chief Director Zimunga back online? Edwin Zimunga, Chief Director? No. All right. I'll have Conrad.
I think I saw him joining, Prof.
Okay. He's not responding though.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I see a hand here. Conrad?
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Conrad. I'm an agribusiness entrepreneur based in Lusaka, Zambia. So my concern is on mechanization, and the government here has also made a lot of pronouncements on mechanization. But then let's look at the people that are the primary producers of what we consume in our region. It's a smallholder farmers. And by description, you agree that these are people who are poor anyway. So, and then the conversation today is on food security and not even profitability of the same people. And yet you're bringing aspects of mechanization. So are we talking about smallholder farmers being able to buy the equipment whose pricing, I've heard someone was talking about probably 400 plus USD on a package? How is this going to be financed? So I'm just trying to look at the realistic part of it, or is it just focusing now on middle to commercial farmers, people who can go to the bank and borrow money and mechanize? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone wants to take a response to that? Director, TLC, or Chief Director, Zimunga, or any other participant?
Yeah, I think that's a valid observation from Conrad. But as I indicated earlier on, most of these smallholder farmers work in groups. And if they could mobilize resources to access financing, I would not recommend free handouts. If you can get a loan, maybe that lasts they can pay back in a period of 3 years as a group, it may work. It maybe also depends on the type of equipment that you want to promote among those groups. But I think it's the direction we should be taking. At the same time, I think the medium-scale farmers have been marginalized. I think the tendency has been to work with smallholder farmers who get this subsidized fertilizer, and then the big farmers who have the opportunity to access loans from banks and some of the projects we are getting, like in Malawi, there's AgCom. I think the middle class farmers, also we need to target them, and most of them also work with smallholder farmers who could still access some of the equipment on a loan basis or a fee basis. I think those are some of the models that we need to start working on. I think for me, that's what I can contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any
Okay,
other
sorry,
question from? Yes, Edwin, you're back. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes,
So
I had a question.
unfortunately, I just had the power cut. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I had a small question for you. We did see a slide that flagged investments from the private sector in the Fumuza regenerative CA. I wanted to find out to what extent have international financial institutions assisted in the evolution of Fumuza in Zimbabwe. We're talking about ADB, World Bank, providing catalytic investment. How have you embraced, or whether they have embraced your initiative in Zimbabwe?
Okay. So indeed, I think we have seen quite a lot of traction in terms of, international financial institutions coming on board. Currently, we have a program which is being run under GCF funding through UNDP, which has really, taken up the issue of Fumuza conservation, agriculture on board. We have also seen, the Econet group coming through to finance Fumuza instead of just concentrating on one plot per farmer. They've extended the concept to 3 plots per farmer, where they say the first plot is for food security, the second plot is for income security, and the third plot is now for commercial purposes and for selling. So I think we have started seeing a lot of other players coming on board in terms of the financing of Fumuza. And pretty much, if you look at it from other institutions, like from a research side, we have had the Australian government coming in to finance a lot of research and R&D into Fumuza through CIMIT, as well as through the Institute of Agriculture Engineering that we had. Maybe to just add on to that, I think my colleague had mentioned the issue to do with misconceptions around the labor-intensive nature of Fumuza. So as a country, before we could even invest at a strategic investment level, we conducted tests for over 3,600 sites in collaboration with the University of Zimbabwe for all the soil types and the regions and districts of Zimbabwe. So you will find that the results are varied. Yes, in sandy soils, you are bound to get up to 4 hours in terms of land preparation, but that does not apply to specific areas with hard clay soils like Chisumbanje, like Chirezi, like Gokwe and other areas. So pretty much you realize that sorry, let me just pause this other gadget. Okay, so pretty much you realize that in terms of the extensive nature of the research that we did, the national average in terms of preparation for the field is between 3.9 to 7, labor days for land preparation under Fumuza. So that on its own really is a major drawback And that's why, as a government, we then had to come up with a structured mechanization initiative for the same.
Thank you so much. All right, participants, any questions? Any questions towards the presentations from Malawi, from Zimbabwe? We have any questions to the presenters? Any further questions?
Prof, I think there are questions also in the chat that could be responded to. I can see there was a question from Susan Bacho to Chief Director Zimunga on the conservation tools or implements that Zimbabwe receive when purchasing machinery currently, but that seems to have been already responded to. There was also the question, there was also the need to share all these presentations, which, as you will say, all of the presentations are currently already in the Africa Mechanized platform, so you can go there and access them. There is the question from Prof. Geoffrey Mrema, whether the research that Matthew was talking about, if it has been published. So perhaps Matthew can respond to that. There's another question from Joe Ramaru, who is asking, how could CA be incorporated? How could CA be incorporated in the training of TVET space in terms of curriculum and the mechanization units of the college developing some of the tools? And I think Zwide responded to part of it, but we would like to hear perhaps from the other presenters. There's a question also from Mufid Suleiman. How can we then balance the paradox between less soil disturbance in CA and the mechanization aspect of agriculture? I don't know if the question is clearly clear to the issue. Yes, so I think those are the few questions that might remain. Prof. Lozabanda, you might want to interject there, how to get the panelists to respond.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, by the time when I was sharing some questions from the chats, there's this one question that many farmers who are practicing the conservation agriculture, most of the report cases in terms of the challenge that they face in their field is the weed control. And I talk about weed control because most of the people were used to conventional agriculture, and when they have to adopt the CA system, the challenge that they report every day that you consult them, they will just tell you weeding is a challenge. So from the experience that is shared by the Zimbabwean and the Malawians, how mechanically were they helping the farmers in terms of controlling their weeds for those who have adopted the CA? Because it shows like adoption has been higher for these two countries, Zimbabwe and Malawi. Thank you. Back to you, Prof.
Thank you so much. Can we start with the Chief Director to respond, Edwin?
Okay, sure. So as Zimbabwe, I think we have really adopted a very strong chemigation component to say as farmers prepare their fields, if there is any residual weed, then you ought to be applying, your pre-emergence chemicals for weed control. And then what this tends to do now, if you do apply them prior you preparing the field, it then means you have also enough mulch for you to also be covering up your field. And secondly, as you are in the, during the course of the production cycle of the crop, the growth phase of the crop, we are also, supporting farmers with chemicals to make sure that you also do weed control. And pretty much you realize that I think one of my colleagues had commented in the chat box to say we have been using knapsack sprayers for those that do not have motorized, power. But for those that now that have these pieces of equipment, I think I'll be glad to also share some of the innovations that have come on board from our own private sector through the reverse engineering drive, where we are also attaching boom sprayers to the very same two-wheel tractor, and then we do our spraying cycles for weed control. So I think we have managed really to deal with that, both at individual household as well as at the service provider model that we have adopted.
Thank you so much, Chief Director. Do you want to add something, Director TLC?
Yes, I wanted to say that previously also with smallholder farmers, we used to promote herbicides on a cost recovery basis, the payback after harvest. But over the years, we see problem also how to for the smallholder farmers to manage these chemicals. We just promote, light weeding. So they still have to do light weeding, also post-harvest weeding and managing the crop residue. We see that over a few years, the weeds really get suppressed. So this is an approach that in TLC we are recommending. Thank you.
Thank you. Since you have the floor, there is a question in the chat about TVET. How could CA be incorporated in TVET in terms of curricula on mechanization? Any insights that you can share? Director Zudi Jerry is muted.
Yeah,
oh, yes.
I was saying that we tried to do a program working with TVET and this African Institute where they do the training of the youth to see a way that we can train youth in simple fabrication of some of these tools that we would like to promote under CA, and they do it as a business. I think it would be very attractive to the youth to engage in something like that. I think it's quite sexy for them. I think our challenge has been to get financing for that kind of activity. But it's something that we need to try, and maybe we should also draw lessons from others who have done this kind of thing in their. Yeah, that's what I can say. But it's something that's quite exciting to get the youth to train simple fabrication, and perhaps they could also get financing. I mentioned earlier on that the NBS has a fund, and they secured also a guarantee facility from the U.S. International Financing Corporation. They do a guarantee of 50% in terms of default. But any bank can apply. Once they get accredited, then they are given that guarantee facility. So it's something that we would like to look at as TOC. Thank you.
Thank you. Any experience from Zimbabwe, TVET? Chief Director Edwin? Any other
Sorry, indeed
question?
we do. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, indeed we do have the experience from our side, because what you see is in Zimbabwe we have what we call agricultural colleges, where we train our extension workers up to diploma level, and pretty much this is a hands-on type of practical learning, where in terms of the incorporation of Mvudza tenets, because it has been such a big national program, it's very much incorporated into the program. But we also run an extension worker training program where all extension workers within the country, through what we call the Agricultural Education Department, are always doing refresher courses, especially of the national flagship programs. And they sit for exams once every quarter on different types of issues that affect agriculture within the country, so that they keep abreast of the latest trends as well as the new trends within that particular setup. So indeed, the agricultural colleges are implementing this within their curriculum. And we have also seen, even now, the universities have taken this on board as part and parcel of some of their modules when they do their conservation agriculture modules in universities.
Thank you so much for the response. I'm checking the questions here. It's about tractor attachments that can open holes and put seed without disturbing the soil. Yes, we are aware of that. We have them. The attachments are there. There was another question. I think this one indeed has been dealt with. The summer power requirements to do the job. Do smallholder farmers have access to affordable power? I think the models from Zimbabwe is an example. Another question that is remaining.
So maybe I can address the one that is talking about the tractor size. So pretty much what we have done in Zimbabwe, the rule of thumb when you look at tractorization and motorized power, is that you would want to dedicate 1 horsepower to a particular hectare for your duty for tractors. But because when you go into the market, the minimum size that you are going to find is between 15 to 20 horsepower. That is what then informed government to say, if you are going to have farmers having a 15 horsepower tractor or a 20 horsepower tractor, surely if they are only going to farm on their own farm, 1.8 hectares, which is the average, size of the plot holding that a farmer has, surely the other one will remain as idle capacity. So instead of having that idle capacity, that's where the service provider model and approach has been promoted, to say that particular farmer who has a 20 horsepower can then offer the mechanization service to 8, 9, or 10 other farmers within their vicinity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I need to be guided in terms of time. Engineer Mkoma, the convener.
Prof, I think we need to conclude in the next 2 minutes.
Thank you.
So if you
let
can,
me let me highlight I think a few takeaways. The first one is a service provider model, which we've learned from Zimbabwe as a game changer that perhaps we can learn and emulate, targeting 30 to 50 families, being provided with a loan package that is being serviced, through the banks. And indeed, we have also seen that the service provider model is integrated. It's integrating the private sector as well as government for it to run. The second takeaway message that we have is the enactment of a national mechanization framework, which perhaps we need to embrace as countries in the Africa region. Perhaps an element that came through from Malawi was the socio-ecological aspect of such a framework. So it's not just about the equipment, the source of power, the machinery, the attachments, but also looking at the social dimensions and the ecological dimensions of mechanization in that particular framework. And indeed, part of that framework would also embrace the investment arena, where banks and the private sector are integral to the framework. At times we do leave out, these, kind of institutions or these kind of services, and only realize later on that we need a bank, we need this instrument. Our government has not provided, and then the bank will often respond, we haven't heard anything from government on this for us to help your project or to help your program. So I think in elaborating the national framework, we really need to embrace different sectors that will assist valorization of mechanization. The third element that perhaps comes to mind is the issue of machinery and power, the source of power as well as machinery. There are a number of issues there. Of course, the cry for a long time, 20, 30, 40 years ago, has always been the amount of money that our farmers, the small-scale farmers, don't have at their disposal to invest in mechanization. It has always been there, and we keep hearing about it now. But we do have a model such as the one that has been elaborated in Zimbabwe, and I've also mentioned the National Investment Framework, which again should be an instrument that countries can use. We have also heard about, reverse engineering or second generation engineering, which is one element of perhaps reducing the cost of the capital cost of machinery and power. Along with that, we heard from Malawi the need to be able to calibrate and validate, in other words, to make the machinery and equipment fit, for purpose. Because what we currently have on the continent is equipment and machinery that was tailored for conventional rather than conservation agriculture. So we need, that element, whether institutions, engineering institutions across the continent, to be able to make the equipment and the machinery and power sources fit for CA. The fourth element or takeaway home message is what I loved most, is the transition from a two-wheel tractor for a four-wheel tractor. We need at times to allow innovations to grow. At times we want to begin from a four-wheel, or we say no, a two-wheel. So I think there is that aspect which we have learned from Zimbabwe, which is interesting, that at times we start small. And once you start small, you find that you can transition, and that transition has been shown clearly in the model that has been provided, from Zimbabwe, the transition from a two-wheel to a four-wheel. The fifth element is the commercialization aspect. And again, it is not just government, but as well as the private sector, together to commercialize, CA. And there's so many angles of commercialization. It can be the service, provision. It can be the hardware. It can be the software. So there are so many angles in this commercialization, which should really be embedded in the national framework for mechanization. The sixth, takeaway message is a policy and knowledge management. There's so much we've heard from Malawi, and of course the success story in Zimbabwe is embedded in the right management of knowledge, information, policies and strategies. These have to come together, that they must be talking to one another. The policy, the messages that go out, and of course the investments, all this has to be synergistic. So I think that's an area that still leaves the mouth a little bit warm. We need to do better in terms of synergizing our policies, our frameworks, our strategies, and then management of the knowledge that is coming from these various various initiatives. And then finally, what I picked up was the issue of training. This is right, falling on top of my nose, Bengi, and in this sphere, that perhaps we're not doing well in terms of quality training. And I still believe that the university should contribute to drive training, not just on CA, on mechanization, but now we have moved to mechanization of CA. So we are already behind with the quality training for CA, and now we have mechanization, which makes it imperative and urgent that our university institutions, together with the various departments in the engineering sector, should quickly embrace their tasks, should undertake their tasks to make this arena, the training, at different levels, at least helpful, not just for CA and mechanization, but for agriculture as a whole. So I think these are the 7 areas that I thought could contribute to our takeaway messages. And I invite participants, if they have something that they picked up, which could be included together with these 7 points that I've mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Lozabanda, for those 7 takeaway points. Very powerful indeed. So I think what we'll do is, unless there's anything burning that somebody once feels we have missed, we have not captured one important aspect in what Prof has just summarized. Conrad,
maybe just a request.
Yes.
Can I just make a request? Is it possible that from this convening, moderators through your partners, you can pick out champions of CA and foundations for farmers who could meet governments around to just share some of these practices? You would agree that some of these are quite isolated. They've been implemented effectively somewhere else, and somewhere else it's not. And issues of food security also hinge on national security. When people are hungry, it's a problem. So can we pick out champions probably that would go around and just meet governments, and that is going to be a good path to integrate some of these principles into colleges of education, like you're saying, into TAVET. But if governments are not aware, then other people would be succeeding somewhere, whereas others are remaining behind. Just a request. Thank you.
Thank you, Conrad. I think that's a powerful point, and Prof will see a way how to capture it.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
yes,
Zwide?
I think the Prof has already mentioned, but this thing about long-term investment, and I'm thinking about smart investment that is creating in-country, sustainability to promote mechanization, one of which is the developing, supply chains, and also coming
Thank
up.
you. I'm now tongue-tied because we requested for your 2 hours and you have given us those 2 hours. So it will be unfair for us to keep on laboring on the subject. So what I would like to say is now to give a very quick thank you. It's not a closing remarks per se, but a very quick thank you. First and foremost to our panelists. I think you will all agree that despite the challenges with connectivity, we had very good content, very good perspective, challenging perspectives even from Matthew Mbanga, challenging us that the 3.5 hours for 1/16th of a hectare is not too much labor. It's a misconception. So those are very good concepts, and we truly convey our thanks to our panelists, Chief Director Zimunga, Matthew Mbanga from Foundation for Farming, Kefas Kamoyo from the Department of Land Resources, and of course, Vida Jerry from Total Land Care. But also our sincere thanks to the FSAMA Steering Committee. And just to refresh your memories that here, this is composed of the African Union Commission. And rightly today, we had the commissioner opening our webinar, Excellency Ambassador Joseph Asako, presented by Prof. Jerome Afaikena. But besides AUC, we also have FAO. And we were delighted to have Joseph Kenzel, the team leader of the mechanization unit at FAO. He's in attendance, he's listening, he has contributed. We truly appreciate that. But we also have the ACT partners, and my board chair, Reynolds Shula, is in attendance, in addition to the secretariat. But most importantly and finally is to you all participants for giving us your very valuable 2 hours And I can see there are 66 people still participating up to this moment. Thank you so much for your time. We will share, we'll synthesize these discussions and put them again for your inputs, the good comments which came from all of you. I know we have gurus in this team. We have the F-Summer developers, Prof. Geoffrey Mrema is with us. I've seen long-term colleagues, Cecil Patrick, Karim Omi, Cleopas Rukuni. Thank you to every one of us. If we can just put on our cameras for those who can, so that we take the final photos, is truly appreciated for your participation. So please put on your photos so that we can have, oh, now we see the faces, yes. Wow. Now we see the faces, fantastic. So truly appreciated. Please note the series of our next webinars. We have a lot more coming in, and 30th of next month is our next webinar. And we'll be sharing these contents in due time so that you can share your critiques, your inputs. And again, thank you very much, and have a lovely morning, a lovely afternoon, a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.